Here are 5 things you didn't know about Alexander Litvinenko's assassination. One of the most sophisticated state-sponsored murders ever committed. First, he was poisoned with polonium-210 during afternoon tea at London's luxury Millennium Hotel. This wasn't just any poison, it's one of the world's most radioactive substances. Second, the polonium was so rare it could only be produced in Russian nuclear facilities. Manufacturing enough to kill someone cost millions of dollars. Third, the assassins left a radioactive trail across London that contaminated dozens of locations. Planes, hotels, restaurants, even embassy buildings required massive decontamination efforts. Fourth, Litvinenko's hair fell out and his organs shut down over 23 days. Doctors couldn't identify what was killing him until it was too late. But here's the most chilling fact. The amount of polonium used was 200 times the lethal dose. This wasn't just murder, it was a message to Russian dissidents worldwide. Cross Putin, and you'll die slowly and publicly. What if the world's most wanted terrorist had never been caught? In 1994, French agents captured Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, better known as Carlos the Jackal. But what if he had escaped that day and vanished into the digital age? His network of safe houses across Europe and the Middle East would have remained intact. Revolutionary contacts from his decades of operations still loyal and waiting. Carlos spoke 6 languages fluently and had mastered the art of forged identities. In an era of increased global travel, he would have been nearly impossible to track. His continued freedom would have inspired copycat attacks worldwide. Young radicals flocking to learn from the legendary terrorists who outsmarted every intelligence agency. Training camps would have sprouted across remote regions, producing hundreds of new operatives. His survival could have changed the entire landscape of international terrorism. Other high-value targets might never have been captured, learning his evasion techniques. One man's freedom potentially reshaping global security forever. The jackal who never got caged. Here are 5 things you didn't know about the D.B. Cooper hijacking case. First, while holding flight attendants hostage, Cooper calmly ordered bourbon and soda, saying please and thank you throughout the entire ordeal. He never raised his voice or showed aggression, treating everyone with bizarre politeness. Second, Cooper wore a business suit, white shirt, and black tie during the hijacking. Even when jumping from the plane at night, he kept his tie perfectly knotted. Third, he specifically requested his $200,000 ransom in older $20 bills. This showed insider knowledge of banking procedures, as newer bills had tracking systems. Fourth, parachute fragments found decades later revealed he jumped into a severe rainstorm wearing only that business suit. No winter gear, no protection against freezing temperatures at 10,000 feet. Fifth, recent DNA evidence suggests Cooper was actually a Boeing employee. He had intimate knowledge of the 727 aircraft, knowing exactly where the aft stairs were and how the plane would handle during his escape. The perfect inside job. Did you know one man spent 9 years planning Europe's deadliest terrorist attack by pretending to be a farmer? In 2011, Anders Breivik killed 77 people in Norway. But the shocking truth is how he prepared for this horror. For nearly a decade, Breivik lived a double life. He created a fake farming company called GeoFarm. This wasn't just any cover story. It was his ticket to legally buy tons of fertilizer. The same fertilizer he would turn into deadly bombs. But that wasn't all. Breivik wrote a 1,500-page manifesto detailing his twisted beliefs. He spent countless hours playing violent video games, using them as training simulators for his planned shooting spree. The level of planning was terrifying. He researched security weaknesses, studied previous attacks, and methodically gathered supplies over years, all while appearing completely normal to everyone around him. On July 22nd, his plan unfolded. First, a bomb in Oslo killed 8 people. Then he traveled to a youth camp on Utoya Island, where he murdered 69 more victims. This case shows how dangerous patient planning can be when combined with evil intentions. Here are 5 things you didn't know about Harold Shipman, Britain's most deadly serial killer. First, this trusted family doctor murdered an estimated 250 patients over 23 years while being celebrated as a caring physician. His colleagues praised his dedication. Patients loved him. But behind closed doors, he was systematically killing the people who trusted him most. Second, he specifically targeted elderly women living alone, injecting them with lethal doses of diamorphine during routine house calls. He knew they were vulnerable, isolated and unlikely to be immediately discovered. Third, he forged medical records to cover his tracks, convincing grieving families that sudden deaths were completely natural. Even when obvious signs pointed to foul play, his reputation made people trust his explanations. Fourth, he altered victims' wills to inherit their money, then comforted their families at funerals while secretly profiting from their deaths. Fifth, he was only caught because one victim's daughter happened to be a lawyer who noticed suspicious changes in her mother's will. Her investigation led to body exhumations that revealed massive opiate overdoses. Trust betrayed on an unimaginable scale. 5 shocking facts about Charles Manson. Charles Manson didn't personally stab anyone during the Tate LaBianca murders. Instead, he was convicted for conspiracy, proving that words, manipulation, and control can be just as deadly as a knife. He convinced his followers that a race war called Helter Skelter was coming, twisting Beatles' lyrics into a prophecy that justified murder in their minds. Before the killings, Manson chased fame as a musician. He lived with Beach Boys drummer Dennis Wilson for a time, and one of Manson's songs was even recorded by the band, without credit. Most of the killers were young women who saw Manson as a messiah. He used isolation, drugs, and psychological abuse to erase their identities and replace them with devotion. Even in prison, Manson never showed remorse. He turned himself into a symbol of chaos, carving an X, later a swastika, into his forehead, and remained a cultural nightmare until his death. Evil doesn't always pull the trigger. Sometimes it pulls the strings. Did you know Japan's most feared crime boss spent decades hiding in plain sight at charity galas? By day, Kazuo Taoka smiled for cameras at cultural ceremonies, shaking hands with politicians and business leaders. By night, he commanded 10,000 Yakuza soldiers across Japan's largest criminal empire. For 30 years, the Yamaguchi-gumi boss controlled everything from pachinko parlors to construction contracts. His legitimate corporations laundered billions through post-war reconstruction deals, all while dining with government officials. The FBI watched him for years but could never make charges stick. He seemed untouchable, a ghost operating in broad daylight. Then on July 11, 1978, gunshots shattered his bulletproof facade. The assassination attempt that nearly killed him triggered the largest Yakuza war in Japanese history. Suddenly, investigators discovered the shocking truth. His criminal network had corrupted the highest levels of government and business. One man's double life had infected an entire nation. The most dangerous criminals are often the ones wearing suits. Did you know that thieves once tried to steal $350 million worth of diamonds in broad daylight with thousands of people watching? In 2000, a gang spent months studying the Millennium Dome in London. They mapped every camera, every guard, every entrance. Their target? The world's most famous diamonds on display. Their plan was insane. Drive a digger straight through the dome's wall, use smoke grenades to blind security, fire nail guns to stop anyone who got close, then race to the diamond case, smash it open, and escape by speedboat down the Thames River. On the day of the heist, everything went perfectly. The digger crashed through the wall. Smoke filled the air. Tourists screamed and ran. The thieves sprinted toward the glittering diamonds. But when they grabbed the gems, something was wrong. These weren't diamonds at all. They were fake crystals. Police had been watching them for months. Armed officers surrounded them instantly. The real diamonds were safely locked away. The entire heist was filmed as evidence. It became one of Britain's greatest police stings ever. Here are 5 things you didn't know about the pizza connection case. First, pizza delivery drivers became unwitting drug mules for the Sicilian mafia in the 1980s. They carried heroin packages alongside pepperoni orders, never knowing they were transporting death through American neighborhoods. Second, the mafia established over 20 pizzerias from New York to Illinois as elaborate drug fronts. Secret compartments were built into ovens and freezers, hiding millions of dollars worth of heroin behind innocent pizza equipment. Third, they communicated through coded pizza orders that fooled law enforcement for years. Extra cheese meant increased shipments. No pepperoni meant lay low from police surveillance. Fourth, they laundered over $50 million in drug money through pizza shop cash registers. Small family businesses suddenly looked incredibly profitable, processing more cash than major restaurant chains. Fifth, the investigation led to the largest heroin seizure in U.S. history. The shocking truth was that Americans had been unknowingly eating at mafia drug distribution centers for years, never suspecting their neighborhood pizza place was feeding a $1.65 billion heroin empire. Did you know that one criminal network supplied 80% of America's heroin for over a decade, using luxury cars as Trojan horses? The French Connection wasn't just a movie, it was the most sophisticated drug operation ever uncovered. Turkish farmers sold raw opium to French chemists in Marseille, who refined it into pure heroin. But here's the genius part. They welded heroin packages directly inside luxury car frames. These beautiful French automobiles were shipped to New York dealers who secretly extracted the drugs. Over 200 pounds of pure heroin worth $32 million crossed the Atlantic every single month, all hidden inside seemingly legitimate car imports. NYPD detective Eddie Egan stumbled onto this empire by pure chance, following suspicious French nationals in Brooklyn. What he discovered was staggering. This single network had been feeding America's addiction since the early 1960s. When authorities finally shut it down in 1972, the damage was already done. Countless lives destroyed across major cities, all from cars that looked completely innocent. Did you know a mathematical genius created the blueprint for every money laundering operation that exists today? Meyer Lansky grew up poor on New York's Lower East Side, but he had a gift for numbers that would change organized crime forever. In the 1930s, while other mobsters were getting arrested left and right, Lansky realized something crucial. Crime needed sophisticated financial management to survive. He started investing mob money in legitimate businesses, hotels, casinos, and real estate across multiple countries. His masterpiece was the skim system in Las Vegas casinos, where millions disappeared before taxes were even calculated. For decades, federal agents chased shadows, while Lansky built a criminal empire spanning from Miami to Havana. When investigators finally caught on, they discovered something terrifying. He had created the template that every criminal organization would copy for the next 50 years. Despite lifetime FBI surveillance and countless investigations, Lansky died peacefully in 1983. He never served significant prison time, but his financial innovations became the foundation for global organized crime. The accountant had outsmarted them all. Before Pablo Escobar was the most feared drug lord on earth, he was literally offering to pay off an entire country's debt, and the government said no. That single rejection helped turn him into a man who would bomb cities, assassinate presidents, and terrorize a nation, all while handing out cash to the poor like a twisted Robin Hood. Pablo Escobar became one of the richest criminals in history, worth an estimated $30 billion. His Medellin cartel controlled up to 80% of the cocaine entering the United States, earning so much money that his crew reportedly spent thousands each month on rubber bands just to hold the cash. He made so much money that he couldn't store it. Millions were buried in fields or hidden in walls, and over time, rats destroyed millions of dollars in forgotten cash. Escobar also craved legitimacy and even became a member of Colombia's Congress until his criminal past was exposed. That's when he declared war on the government. His infamous rule was plata o plomo, take the bribe or take the bullet. Judges, police, and journalists who refused often paid with their lives. Yet in poor neighborhoods, Escobar built homes and soccer fields, earning loyalty that made him harder to catch. In one of the most surreal deals ever, Escobar agreed to surrender only if he could build his own prison, complete with a bar and soccer field. He later escaped. Escobar was killed in 1993, but his legacy of violence, money, and fear still haunts Colombia and the world. Did you know corrupt officials once executed a judge and his wife in broad daylight to cover up their crimes? Judge Vincent Sherry was investigating illegal gambling operations in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1987. He had uncovered connections between local politicians and criminal enterprises. The death threats started coming immediately, but he refused to back down. On September 14th, professional killers entered the Sherry home during the day. They executed both Vincent and his wife Margaret with silenced weapons, military precision. What happened next shocked everyone. The FBI investigation revealed the murder was ordered by the mayor, police chief, and strip club owners. An entire city government had been purchased by organized crime. They were running drug trafficking and money laundering operations through Mississippi's Gulf Coast. The judge wasn't their only target. They were eliminating witnesses and honest officials one by one. The aftermath was staggering. Over a dozen officials convicted, the entire government restructured. Organized crime had literally bought a city. Here are 5 things you didn't know about Ariel Castro's House of Horrors that shocked Cleveland. First, he kidnapped 3 women over just 2 years by simply offering them rides. Amanda Berry in 2003, Gina DeJesus in 2004, and Michelle Knight in 2002. All disappeared within blocks of his home on Seymour Avenue. Second, he turned his basement into a soundproof prison, chained the women up, boarded every window, and created a dungeon nobody could hear. Third, he fathered a daughter with Amanda Berry during her captivity. But here's the twisted part. He kept appearing as a helpful neighbor. He even joined search efforts for the missing women while holding them prisoner. Fourth, his psychological torture went beyond physical abuse. He staged fake escape attempts and played recordings of their families pleading for their return. Fifth, neighbors called police multiple times about suspicious activity. Officers visited but never properly searched the house. For 3,139 days, the torture continued until Berry's dramatic escape in 2013. A decade of suffering that could have been prevented.